Well, hello and welcome to the 11th edition of the School Improvement Services Podcast. My name is Gretchen Bruner and I'm the Executive Director of School Improvement Services. With me again is Sean Aker, our Student Success Act Coordinator, and today we are excited to have Dr. Maria Chavez Harrelson join us for some later discussion. So welcome, Dr. Maria. Thank you for being here. So let's start out today with a couple of updates from Sean.
Great. As always, the PD Networks campaigns, the MailChimp campaign that gets sent out to our regional partners is going out later this week or perhaps early next week. We've got some updates, some links in there, but the ones I want to call out that are happening immediately, we've got Envoy training happening on August 14th, and so that one's coming up. It's for classroom management, nonverbal classroom management support. The target is new teachers. The target's new teachers, but it could be folks who just really want some additional support with classroom management. Then on August 16th and 17th, and maybe even, they're all important. Like a lot of the professional development we do is really important. But the Emergent Bilingual Coach Institute, 2 days, the 16th and the 17th. It's for administrators and ELL teachers. And what we're looking at are those new partnerships. So maybe an ELL teacher has a new administrator. We want them to come. The ELL teacher will come both days. The administrator comes one day to really be informed. And it's a great opportunity for that kickoff. Or on the other end, maybe there's a new EL teacher and that person's going to bring their administrator and they're going to learn together. So it's really for those new partnerships. It's a summit, so it's 2 days. And then the official kickoff event happens at the end of September. And that's when our new folks and our returners come to the table. And so,
great.
Yeah, so that link is in the notes here. And there's a flyer in the notes as well. So again, day one is for ELD teachers. Day two is for the ELD teachers and administrators. And then we're still seeking interest for Modern Classrooms project. We still have a number of slots that are available. We had 118 folks expressed interest, 100, and that number might be slightly off, but we had 108 completers, and 96% of them, 92 or 96% of them recommended to a colleague. So
it's exciting.
Did you want to share anything about Modern Classrooms?
Well, I think the most exciting thing about Modern Classrooms for me is it's not just popular with like a brand new teacher. We have 30-year veterans who are going through and learning just a different way to connect with students. And that's the main piece, is that connection with students and that ability to be able to hear from them, learn about their experiences, really dig in deep with students and help them in not just understand something sort of, but really dive in deep and have a deep understanding of the content and be able to apply it. And so that's my most exciting takeaway from what I've heard from educators. And I know McMinnville did a session at COSA this year, and they're sharing and their ahas through that were really exciting to hear. They've done a phenomenal job in their district around teaching and learning, and to have educators that just really were ready to tweak something and try something different, and then to talk about it. It's exciting and invigorating. So
always improving.
Yeah. That's the key.
Okay. Well, Gretchen, did you have any updates for the state this week?
I don't have any. I want to concentrate on Dr. Maria's time today. I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for being a part of this. We've talked about this for a long time, and now that we have all the cool gear,
this is pretty cool.
And it works better. At least people can hear us better.
Yeah, always some adjustments there.
Always some adjustments. Sure. There's one of our mics is making like it's vibrating a little bit. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Well, it's great. I appreciate the opportunity, and the more I can share about equity, diversity, inclusion, and resources and services, and the more people know about it, perhaps it's just understanding what that means. It's like, what does that mean? What's a consultation mean? So I'm excited about being able to explain a little more in depth.
So for those who are watching who might not have interacted with you. Can you tell them a little bit about just your position here and what it entails and
Sure.
yeah, what it looks like for them?
Just completed 3 years at the WESD, and 2 of those years, it's an inaugural position, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and then I'll explain a little bit why it's DEI some places and EDI here. However, it's been 2 years, and my role is as a regional EDI director is to serve the school districts in Region 16, but also to reach out South Coast because I'm part of the REN. So a big area, phenomenal teachers and educators to work alongside. I learn a lot from them. So my role is to offer consultation, and we'll go deeper into what that means, but I'm available. Any questions, anything having to do with EDI, how to strategize, how to implement, what resources, answering questions. I've looked at some documents also for language. So I'm thrilled and I'm excited, especially to work alongside both of you. It's been really great.
Thank you.
Likewise.
When I think it was the second year you were here, and we kind of put together this, the equity leadership cohort for superintendents. And I remember one of our superintendents, it was like, you asked the question, what is your hope for equity work? And one of the superintendents said, I want equity to be as natural as breathing.
I remember that, yes.
And it takes so much concentration and diligence and self-reflection, self-awareness to really understand what that means to put in play, how to be considerate of everybody in the room, and the time I've been able to spend with you, working with our team, the one-on-one conversations, it's been invaluable.
Thank you.
To help me be a better leader. And still, it's like, even tailoring these questions, right? I sent you a set of questions.
Right.
You're like, what if we rephrase them like this? And I'm like, that is better. That is better. So.
Sean and Gretchen too, we've had this conversation. It's just, it doesn't end. You don't complete the EDI journey. It really is lifelong. As demographic shift, as curriculum shifts, as the world shifts. It's just, that's what keeps it exciting, but also can create anxiety, right? And stress around the topic. So my role, the favorite part of my role is building relationships and building trusting relationships. So I'm happy to explain kind of how that rolls out and how might I be accessible. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's all about co-creation and co-designing. It's meeting people where they are. Doesn't matter. It's just, where do we start? What might we do? And then start developing this iterative process of putting EDI into practice. I've been doing it for a couple of decades, and it's a never-ending journey of learning. Mm-hmm. So there is no absolutes. It's just you're constantly learning, which is all the big part about education.
Well, let's get into the first question.
Sure.
Then. When district leaders and/or staff, when they request EDI consultation and support, they reach out to you, what can they expect?
Yeah, and thanks for the question. It usually comes a phone call or an email. And so I would say I would define it into 6 phases. And I've learned this working with school districts. Like, school districts have to define what this means for me. I didn't come in with the prescribed way. This is the way we're going to do it. It starts with an introduction, how I work. I always say, no shame, blame, or judgment. We just start from there. We're going to learn together. It's a collective process. And so it's an introduction. Mm-hmm. I like to kind of talk about how I do EDI work, how we can collaborate, and how errors and missteps are natural for all of us. And then so we come into some kind of agreement, like, might we meet once a month for 6 months to see how this develops? Because it's a slow process to build language, to build ideas, to start strategizing. But generally speaking, it's an introduction to each other. Perhaps there's a team already established. To the team, relational trust building is critical because we get into vulnerable topics,
right,
and it's really important to pause and kind of sense where we are. So then once we come to an introduction and an agreement, then we move to what I call the second phase, which is Perhaps it's one person, it could be a superintendent, it could be a principal, it could be a group of 3 or 4 teachers, various grade levels, then identify who the team is or the person is. And then we start talking about who else might be interested to generate this knowledge and create shared knowledge. And so we identify a team. It doesn't have to be the school district equity team. It might just be a team of explorers on this topic. And then the third phase is building that knowledge. What areas do we need to go into? I never come with that prepared. It is with the collaboration of whoever I'm working with. And then building language, EDI language acquisition, which is, do we have an agreement on what some of the definitions are? What does it mean for your school district? How might it change for your? So there's some language that we built upon. So that's about sometimes 3 to 4 meetings, which end up into some really amazing, profound dialogues. And then we might move into phase 4, which is there a change concept? Are you looking specifically at a policy or a system or a meeting or how you work with students in various areas? So it is like all across the board. And then perhaps identifying then a strategic plan. And a lot of school districts have their equity strategic plans, but they haven't developed them further, or they haven't put an implementation process in, and that's the next phase. And then we get to the point where we're actually putting it into practice, which is a lot of ups and downs, and oops, did I say the wrong thing? I'm like, this is all about learning. So then we get into that phase where I say, we're now, I've learned so much from EDI practitioners already in the school district. So it's like we just continue down that EDI practitioner journey. Mm-hmm. And then we go back and look, we do the PDSA cycle, which is plan, do, study, act. It's like, how did that work for you? And we adapt, we shift. So it's this flexible iterative process. And it looks different for every school district. It's never the same, but it's pretty fascinating process of creating new knowledge and learning. And EDI, equity is the why, D is the diversity, which is who, and then inclusion is the how, which is one of the toughest steps. Because we can say, well, there's inequities, we know data shows that. We can look at that across the board and then look at diversity. Teams are diversifying. What does that mean? Sometimes we touch upon recruitment retention topics in the midst. And then inclusion is like, how do we get everybody's voices in there? That's the, have to be really thoughtful and strategic. And that's where we broaden our scope of how we truly hear others' voices. And that can be across every type of group, community members. So it's very diverse, even in the way we approach that.
That's where I feel like you're masterful in that relational piece and bringing everybody, right? Giving everybody that space to start to have those conversations, to be at that ending point where they're starting to implement. So I wanted to commend you on that because we had training today and just the conversations were so deep and everybody was like, that was so great. And just to see things. And so it was very powerful.
Dr. Maria, to piggyback on what Gretchen was saying during that, recently I was in a workshop today with Dr. Maria. And,
as was I.
Right. And after the workshop, I come up here and I've got a colleague who is experiencing something fairly minor, but there's like a little bit of a health issue. And, I asked my colleagues, do you have a few minutes that we could chat, or where do you want to chat? I said, we can just go to my office and we can pull up the thing on the screen. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. Are they able to do that right now? Right? Do I need to consider their circumstances? Because what if it's like, we could just as easily meet at their table. It doesn't really matter. I know that seems so minor, but it's a consideration of others.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. It's being accommodating to the max, which slows things down, and then we have to figure out what does that mean for me in terms of time when we're so used to slicing and dicing time, right? It's like who's the system serving? Right,
go slow to be able to move fast.
Exactly.
Right? You have to have all of those components in place, or it's not true, meaningful, deep work. So
I just wanted to explain that what I described, the 6 phases for one particular school district, which is pretty it's common, took 2 years to get to that point. So it's a long, lengthy process. And then at some point I step back depending on where the group is, and then I might check in once a month or a quarterly. So because it's a department of one until further later this month, there'll be 2 of us. But so it's like, it's like that encouragement that I know you got this, you can do it. Let's just explore it together. And then once you're on your way, I'll check back. What questions do you have?
So how have you partnered with districts developing their school district equity committees?
Some examples are there's a book study in a middle school of educators and a principal. There are direct work with superintendents on various school districts who specifically are looking at the legislative mandate to develop school district equity teams. Like, how do we do that? How do we get that started? So I kind of serve as a coach and a guide. It just depends on what the need is, and so I'm asking questions like, what's the context? What are some challenges? Because the reality is that there is no perfect way to do this. It's all exploratory, but we are moving forward. So a couple of school districts have done Every Student Belongs, the policy. Let's read it. Let's really get to know what that means. What does that look like when it's implemented? Oh, there's a guidebook. Well, let's read the guidebook. How do we respond to the students who may experience harm or those who have caused harm in a way that's educational for both? So it's fascinating. Educators want to do the best they can, and those are some examples of how I'm engaged. Sometimes it's just a question and a phone call.
Well, I know that when we first started, and you and I always chat about this, I'm all about like the impact and measuring things and like all of this. And so it's, it's really challenging because when I hear you talking about this, I'm like, okay, well, there's a clear objective. Every district has to have an EDI committee, right? That's a state mandate.
That's an easy one.
Objectively, we can do that. But for what purpose, right? And we can't define that for them. Because the state said so isn't really the reason. There's a deeper reason why this needs to exist. And it comes down to, by and large, community engagement for a greater sense of belonging.
That's right, Sean. Community engagement is a big part of this. Yeah. It really is. Just learning how to invite the community's voice and hear how we could better serve the community, which is families and students.
Yeah. And the process to those outcomes is so important. Like that's just the main. What are people getting out of that? How is it really making the changes? Yes, we're at this outcome, but what was either the positive cost or the negative cost to get there, and how is that going to affect the whole? So it's really exciting work and exciting to think of it that way. So
yeah.
Okay, so the last prepped question we have for you.
Okay.
So because EDI is collaborative work, how can district leaders prepare their teams to engage in this work?
I love this question because it's like, we should just be able to start on a topic and work through it. EDI is so complex, and in our modern world, it can really activate a lot of different opinions and beliefs because we're talking about people's way of living and thinking, belief systems. So when I think about all the resources that like the Department of Education provides, sometimes I take a resource and I share that with whomever's asking, and that might not be it. We might have to shift and work with that because based on the communities they're serving, based on history within the school district, based on many things, and it could polarize. So in preparation, it's like have lengthy conversations with your staff, your team, your team partners around how we're going to manage the anxiety that this can induce, how we're going to manage I call them healthy tensions. The bottom line for me is like every student belongs and deserves the best education possible. How can we do that in a world where there's different belief systems? So it's talking to the team, to your staff about how might we manage all this, right? It's how do we manage this and stay in relationship? That is like we sometimes have to just hone our best skills in those moments. And they're powerful when it happens. But we know there's different religious beliefs, different political beliefs, there's different beliefs about the world and how it should function. But if we focus on every student belongs and every student deserves the best, then we're going to do our best to serve every student in different ways. But we have to have those conversations with our team. It's like, if we can reduce the anxiety around this topic first, how are we going to do that? How are we going to talk about this? What are we going to do when those little sticky points come up? Who do I go to first? And because they will come up. But the work is powerful once we get through that. But it's like, don't just on your mark, set, go. It's really all those intricate conversations with staff that may not be proponents of EDI. Where is the connection there? Where's the common ground? Every student belongs. We need to provide the best education for every student, which is what we all want. It just means we have to make some adjustments.
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot in here, Dr. Maria. I mean, it's always so good to speak with you. And yeah, if you had one hope for districts, if you could just elevate one hope for districts, what would you hope for them for the coming year?
To dip their toes in the waters of EDI, just start exploring it. Where might there be that open window? And then get a sense for how that is working. And then watch what happens with the students and families. It just is like, wow, that little shift made a big difference. We're seeing more families, more students are giving voice, more teachers feel like they belong. So if we don't attempt that slowly, carefully, thoughtfully, we'll never experience the power behind that. It's pretty amazing stuff. That's why I love the way this functions here. So a call or an email is the best way to start that conversation.
Okay, and that's Maria.
Chavez
Yeah.
Haroldson at WESD.com.
Okay, and we'll make sure we get that in the show notes if they're not already in there.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And you asked I love that we were on the same page because you asked the exact question that I was thinking of asking. So I think we're two, and that's perfect. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we have to be courageous about it. And being courageous doesn't mean we don't have fear. It just means being able to manage the fear so that we can be courageous.
Right.
I mean, I put that in practice all the time. It's like, okay, this is nerve-wracking and inducing anxiety, but if I hold that and I know that and we can do that with our teams, then it's like, I'm here for you. We're like, we could do this together.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to trip and do it right and have right and figure things out.
Wrong thing. Yeah.
Right. But coming with that compassion, and that's what I appreciate about you, and one of my personal biggest learnings from you is just the way you present everything and the way you invite people into a conversation. So.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
well, absolutely.
We will definitely have you back. So we're kind of at the end of our time.
Yeah. There was just getting back, like there is, like you talk about that process, and so districts could expect, going back to that very first question, they can expect that if they engage in equity support, whether it's with you or somebody else, that you mentioned phases. Right. And if we think about like the NERN, I can't remember what that stands for, but the phases of implementation, there is that exploration, initial implementation, that, or I guess it's installation, then initial implementation, implementation, and ultimately sustainability. The work carries on without without specific support.
It doesn't have to be grandiose. It just has to be a slow, intentional start. And really, here's one last thing I'll share is that let's take a look at the demographic conversion in the Pacific Northwest. There are constant changes, which means constant changes in the way I do things, in the way I say things, in the language I learn. And it's not that term, it's the other term now. But that is education. That's all educational. So it's like I say, step into the 21st century, folks. EDI is going to be there. It just depends on how do we take the first step. And I'll take the first step alongside you. It's just, we're going to both learn something new.
So start exploring if you haven't.
right?
Love it.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We will have another podcast coming up in a couple of weeks, potentially with another guest to be determined, a surprise guest apparently, because
I gotta check.
we gotta check out a couple of things. So, but thank you again for joining us. As always, if you have any questions or if there's anything coming up or we can support you in any way, please reach out. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks again, Dr. Moran.
You're welcome.